Welcome to J is for Justice podcast. If live breaking news and following true crime is your thing, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you like what you see in my videos, please consider giving them a thumbs up. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Happy holidays. It is the day before Christmas Eve, and I am feeling a little bit under the weather. It's sinuses for sure, but I am here, and I figured this would be a good time to catch up on this crazy case in Michigan, just outside of Metro Detroit. It's their preliminary hearings, so it's pretty long. I'm going to play it on a little bit faster speed, but I figured it would be a good time for us to watch together. And I'm going to be watching on my TV with you guys and getting some last minute Christmas stuff done because I'm way behind, y'all. I got a Christmas Eve gathering tomorrow with my family, my daughter, my son, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter. So I got to get a bunch of stuff wrapped, and I'm making some special presents. So, hey, Gone Girl. Hello, the best mods on YouTube. Welcome in. But I'm going to give you a little case background because I see that 85% of you that are here aren't aware of this case. So let's get into that. Angie B, I've been thinking about you, baby. I hope that you have a good Christmas with those babies, and you're heavy on my mind and my heart. I want you to know that. One Odd Flow coming in hot. We haven't played that in a while. Did you guys hear that okay? Let me see. You guys don't have any audio. Let's see. Let me know if you can hear the video. Hey, say no. You got presents to wrap. You have pneumonia. I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better soon. That's the worst. It just runs you right down. You know what I mean?
Are chilling.
Okay. All right, here we go, guys. This is the first video. This is when this first happened. This is the man's house who was attacked. DTE is Detroit Energy, which is the electrical company up there. So, and gas. They do have gas as well. But DTE are utility workers in Detroit and Michigan. Metro Detroit, I guess I should say. And it's cold in the D. Right, meow. It sure is.
Thanks for joining us here at 5. I'm Will Jones in for Devin Skillian.
And I'm Kimberly Gill. The sheriff says they got the first call a little before noon today. Happened at a home on Newcastle Drive, not far from the intersection of Dutton and Squirrel Road. So let's get out to Sean Lay. He has more on this story. Sean.
Sheriff Broussard is right here, as a matter of fact. Sheriff, I'll just grab you real quick because you said you could have, well, I was asking you just now, anything on these two suspects posing as DTE guys in a white truck. They're gone. The man in there, 72 years old, is dead. And you say you could have a picture for us of the suspects, but you don't because of Ring camera. Ring doorbell.
They're not cooperating.
Not cooperating. They just said, no, we're not going to give you the images.
We have a search warrant. We have permission of the homeowner. We have had her talk directly to them.
Sure.
She's missing her phone that does two-factor authentication.
Okay.
They reset her password, but it goes back to the phone she doesn't have.
And you want them to just send it.
So we can't access the pictures of our suspects, which are on that system. We could hand it to your viewers now and say, these are who we're looking for.
We see your deputies fanned out countywide. We see your helicopter up because there's two guys on the loose who killed this man.
Right.
And you want to get the images from Ring.
We could hand them to you right now if they would be cooperative.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so do you guys remember me presenting this? We did watch this one day. They were trying to get the images of the guys that came to the door and said they were DTE workers. They came back 2 days in a row. They came one day and then it didn't go through, and then they came back another day. Happy holidays, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Sherry just tipped.
Sherry has supported the stream using J4J Live. Merry Christmas, Jay.
I love you so much, Sherry. Merry Christmas to you, too. So the sheriff was frustrated about the Ring doorbell footage not being given to him right away.
For that update, Sheriff, here's the very latest, guys. Watch this.
Two individuals, a thin African-American male and a heavy-set Hispanic male.
Wait till you see these
approached
two
the
clowns.
house and said they were DTE workers looking for a gas leak. They had a placard on the side of a white pickup truck.
Oakland County Sheriff Michael Broussard giving us the details of a horrific homicide that unfolded at this Rochester Hills home on Newcastle in the Hawthorne Hills subdivision just before noon today.
Merry Christmas,
Two men
Island.
posing as utility workers. The sheriff says in no way were they connected to DTE or any other work crew.
Additionally, we've recently learned that they came last night at about 10 o'clock last night and also said the same thing, but they were not given admittance into the house last night. They came back this morning with the same thing, said there's a gas leak. They were allowed in the house. The husband went to the basement with them where the gas comes into the house, and the wife never saw him again.
Horrible.
The 72-year-old homeowner was found by sheriff's investigators dead in the home's basement. The two men who got inside then duct taped the man's wife in a room upstairs. How her husband was killed remains unknown right now.
We're not sure exactly the cause, quite frankly, because there was so much blood. We're not sure whether it was any kind of gunshot or a blunt force trauma or what caused.
Okay, so that's the initial report, right? We didn't even have pictures of the suspect yet, but the wife who was tied up, she's going to testify in this preliminary hearing that we're going to watch. So here is the follow-up when they arrested the two suspects.
And we're going to begin tonight with our first look at one.
By the way, this happened 2 months ago, and then they were in court 5 days ago for the prelim. So we're not too behind. This trial will be upcoming in 2025. If the preliminary is interesting, maybe you guys will want to follow the trial with me. You'll have to let me know.
The two men accused of posing as DTE workers and killing a man inside his Rochester Hills home. Today, 39-year-old Joshua Zuazo appeared in court to be formally charged with felony murder.
His alleged accomplice, Carlos Hernandez, is expected to be brought here to Michigan next week after waiving extradition in Louisiana. We want to get to Sean Lay live right now. Sean, we're finally getting some insight into a motive here.
Let's talk about motive. It's in the court documents we got here today at District Court 52-3. Motive, clearly robbery, according to the sheriff and sheriff's investigators. Why the Murray family in Rochester Hills was targeted, that is still under investigation. Why two people went there and what they wanted inside.
Hey, Rumor.
Again, sheriff's investigators have not been able to answer that question. What is the link here? In the meantime, one of two men, as you say, officially charged. Let's take you inside court.
Everybody pitched in. And so now we've had both in custody for days in a horrific murder.
Let me take you inside a Rochester courtroom for our first look at one of the two men sheriff's investigators say.
There's the images of them from the Ring doorbell. When they finally got them, there they are with the vests on. They had a white pickup with an emblem on the side. And they're coming to this man's door because he owned a pawn shop.
Posed as DTE workers 1 week ago. 39-year-old Joshua Zuazo of Dearborn.
We're DTE. We're checking for gas leaks.
A shocking.
Look at this asshole. Look at him. This is absolutely terrifying. 39 years old and this guy's doing this shit.
Plan to get inside the home of Hussein Murray, who had a jewelry and pawn shop in Hamtramck. Murray's 72-year-old wife was bound with duct tape upstairs. Murray was found bloodied and dead in the basement.
Upon arrival on scene, deputies located her husband deceased in the basement, bound by duct tape around his ankles and wrists and duct tape circling his head several times.
God.
Suspect number one.
They wrapped duct tape around his head. This is horrific. Angie B just donated a membership. Jubes, welcome. Make sure you thank Miss Angie B. Thank you, Ange.
One investigator say
it's a very, very, very nice area. Yes, Teresa.
It's so cold in the deep. How the fuck do we supposed to keep peace?
Carlos Hernandez arrested a day later in Louisiana, and we are digging to find out a lot about Joshua Zuazo.
We do show that he has extensive criminal history that dates back 2.5 decades.
We dug up that criminal history, released in 2022 for having a weapon in prison.
Wow.
Has convictions for armed robbery, multiple other robberies, felony gun crimes, and fleeing.
In this matter, bond will be denied. It is obvious that these charges are very serious. This court has a concern about the public safety, and this court does have concern about a flight risk.
All right, that's just happening here in court. A short time ago, Zuazo pleading not guilty to all three charges. He is being held without bond right now. You mentioned Kimberly Hernandez will be brought back by sheriff's investigators sometime next week to face charges right here. In the meantime, we keep asking the sheriff. We just interviewed him a few minutes ago.
Thank you.
Melissa B has supported the stream using J4J Live.
Thank you,
Merry
Melissa.
Christmas, Snowman.
Merry Christmas. She said Merry Christmas, Snowman. Thank you so much, Melissa B. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Anyone else involved here? How far does this go? We're still working on that. We'll have that answer at 6 o'clock.
Sean, before you go, I want to ask you about something. You got to see the witness list that includes Home Depot, Lowe's, and TikTok. Explain.
We got to ask questions about that. Lowe's and Home Depot, apparently these two are on video. Sheriff's investigators found buying things like zip ties, and they say the same zip ties size were found at the scene of the crime. TikTok, the sheriff tells me a tip, apparently an important tip, came through TikTok, and that's why they have it on the witness list to get that tip in the video.
Interesting. We'll continue to follow.
Interesting. So on the witness list is TikTok, Home Depot, where they were buying the zip ties for the crime. Cameras get them every time. Pawn shops and laundromats are really good for landing money. It's so sad. Work 70 some years, build your own business in Hamtramck, which is a suburb of Detroit, only to be taken out by these fools. And then your wife has to live with this. Right? So his wife is going to testify here in this preliminary that we're about to watch right now. So that is the latest and greatest. Here is the prelim from 5 days ago where they were bound over for trial. So here we go. Look at him. Look at him. Blit. It's so sad. There's his wife. Y'all, that's his wife. She was bound and gagged while they murdered her husband. Monsters. Hang on, let me fix the screen. You guys like it like that? Is that big enough? Oh, he's ginormous. I was like, is that Josh the lab or the suspect in this case? I was a little confused.
Good morning.
Good morning. Have a seat. Ma'am, can you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Linda Murray, Linda Murray.
Thank you. And ma'am, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you could do me a favor when you testify and speak up very loud, because I have to hear you, but also the attorneys have to hear your answers. If you can do that for me?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Murray, if you could tell us, have you been married?
Yes.
And who has your husband been?
Pardon?
Who's your husband?
Oh, Hussein Murray.
Okay. And how long have you been married?
54 years.
Do you have any children?
Yes.
How many children do you have?
3.
Any grandchildren?
Yes.
Were you residing in a home with your husband?
Yes.
What was the address of the home that you've been residing with your husband?
3730 Newcastle Drive.
Okay. Is that located in the city of Rochester Hills in Oakland County, Michigan?
Yes.
How long ago did you purchase that house?
1999.
Okay. And you've been living there ever since?
Yes.
Was your husband employed at the time of his passing?
Yes.
And can you tell us how he was employed?
He was owner of a jewelry store and a pawn shop.
Okay. And what were the names of that jewelry store, and then tell me the name of the pawn shop?
The jewelry store was Gold and Glitter, Inc., and the pawn shop was Hamtramck Pawn Brokers.
Did he own those together at a certain location?
Yes.
And what is that location?
It's 10,000 Joseph Campbell in Hamtramck.
Okay. And as far as the physical layout, are they in the same building together? Are they separated?
No, same building.
Okay. And how long has your husband owned those stores?
Since 1995.
Okay. Would he go to the stores himself to operate them?
Yes.
And did he go on a regular basis?
Yes.
What was your husband's routine for going to the stores?
We'd get up in the morning, we would have breakfast, and he would get ready and go to the store around 12 o'clock.
I noticed a pause. This is very tough. There's no one here who doesn't appreciate this testimony is tough. If you need to pause, let the judge know. If it gets emotional, it's perfectly understandable, okay?
Okay.
So try to focus on my questions and try to focus on the answers if that helps at all.
Okay.
What was the store hours, if you know them?
They were 9:30 until 6:30.
And are they open Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday?
Monday through Saturday.
And when he would go to his business, is there a car that he would drive?
Yes, an Audi.
Okay, and what year Audi, if you know?
2011.
And had what color was the Audi?
Black.
Would he drive that Audi back and forth on a regular basis?
Yes.
Would he park that Audi any place specifically when he was home?
Yes, in the driveway.
Okay. What kind of driveway do you have at that residence?
We have a circular driveway.
Okay. And do you know where he would park that Audi when he would be at his businesses?
Normally, it would be on the side of the business on Yemen Street.
Okay. And that's an area that's visible to the public?
Yes.
Okay. When he would work at his businesses, was he a hands-on person or would he work behind the scenes?
No, he was hands-on.
And do you have other family members who have worked at those businesses with him?
Yes.
Okay. The residence itself, can you describe the layout of your house on Newcastle?
It's a colonial, 2 floors. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths,
And where was the master bedroom located?
upstairs,
Okay.
toward the front of the house.
Does the house have a basement?
Yes,
And how would you describe the basement? Is it finished, partially finished, or unfinished?
it's partially finished.
Do you have a garage?
Yes,
Is the garage attached or unattached?
attached.
Do you have a vehicle that you would drive?
Yes,
Where would your vehicle be parked?
in the garage.
Now, is there any type of security system that you have at that residence?
A ring on the front door and by the garage door.
Okay. And that's a camera that would record stuff?
Yes,
And it would record audio as well as video?
yes,
Ring cameras have a lot of different setups. Is it a setup where if there was a notification, you could view the notification from your personal phone?
yes,
And you're familiar with how that system worked?
yes,
Did you have any type of security alarm separate from the Ring system?
yes, guardian alarm.
And what type of alarm was that? Meaning, do they monitor if there's a break-in or you have a panic button?
Yeah, a panic button and they monitor, if there's a break-in. If the alarm, false alarm, if you don't put the right code.
Okay. Does the house have any type of safe inside?
No,
Your husband, would he ever take large amounts of money home from the business and store it at your residence?
sometimes,
Was it something that you would be aware of?
yes,
On the days that we're talking about, the 10th and the 11th of October, were you aware of any special amounts of money being inside the residence?
no,
Did your family or your husband have any firearms?
yes,
Okay, did he have any handguns?
yes.
What kind of handgun did he have?
I believe it was a Glock.
And was it a gun that he would carry on him?
Yes,
Would he carry it for work?
yes,
Would he carry it when he wasn't at work?
yes,
Was your husband right-handed or left-handed?
right-handed.
And did he have a holster for that gun?
Yes,
Do you know where he would wear that holster on his person?
on the right side.
You've seen it many times before?
Yes,
Do you have a handgun of your own?
no,
Now, as far as you indicated that you could get Ring notifications to your phone, you had a cell phone at the time?
yes,
And did your husband have a cell phone?
yes,
You would communicate to each other by the cell phone.
yes,
Let me direct your attention to the evening of October 10th, 2024. Do you recall the events of that evening?
yes.
Approximately 10 o'clock that evening, can you tell us if something unusual occurred?
2 gentlemen, Mr. Hernandez and Mr. The other one, they came to the door and said that they were DTE employees and that they were checking for a gas leak.
Okay. You were at home?
Yes,
Was your husband at home?
yes,
Was anybody else at home?
no,
Was anybody else living in the residence, apart from yourself and your husband, on October 10th, a full-time residence?
no,
Did you have any type of dogs that would alert to people that were at your residence?
no.
Okay, how was it that you first knew that somebody was at your door on October 10th at 10 p.m.?
I had the Ring gave me a notification on my phone.
Okay, so you're the Ring notified through your phone,
Yes,
and did you look at your phone?
yes,
Now, who went to the door that day?
my husband.
Okay, and how did you tell him somebody was at the door, or did he hear it himself?
No, he heard the Ring make the notification, but I told him that there was someone at the door.
Okay. And where were you when you told him that?
I was upstairs by the master bedroom looking down onto the hallway where the front door is.
Okay, and where was your husband when you told him that? Was he also upstairs?
No, he was in the family room on his way to the front door.
Okay, so you yelled it downstairs to him?
Yes,
Did you go back into the bedroom, or did you stay out where you could see what was happening?
and I stayed out.
Did you go downstairs, or did you stay upstairs?
I stayed upstairs.
To have the ability to see down, describe, stairwells are different in different houses. What kind of stairway did you have going upstairs?
In the front of the house where the master bedroom is, it was a curved stairway.
Okay. So you had no blockage of your view from upstairs to the front door?
Correct.
Okay, what did you see happen when your husband went to the front door?
They said that they were looking for a...
Yes. Let me redirect the question. We can't say the word they.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you know which person is saying what, if you don't, say, I just heard, okay? So let me ask the question again. Did you hear your husband say anything when he went to the front door?
Yes.
And what did you hear your husband say?
Response.
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted, it's just that it was stated.
Thank you. I'm going to allow it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And what did you hear your husband say?
He asked him, he says, hello, can I help you? And
Was there a response?
Mr. Hernandez says that they were looking for a gas leak in the neighborhood.
Okay, and was this through a closed door or an open door?
Open door.
And what did your husband respond to that?
He said, there's a gas leak, and from upstairs, I said, it's kind of late for someone to be coming to the door, isn't it? And he didn't reply to me, but Mr. Hernandez said that they checked the neighbors to see if there was a gas leak, but they needed to check our house. And Mr. Hernandez wanted my husband to sign a clipboard that gave him permission to come in. But then I asked my husband, I said, do you have your gun? And he didn't reply, but I know shortly after, Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Zuazo, he said that they left. They'll come back tomorrow.
Okay, let me stop you there. When that was said about a gas leak, had you smelled any gas in your residence prior?
No.
Okay. So that was the exchange at the front door?
Correct.
Did they indicate about coming back the next day?
Yes.
And what was said and who said it to your husband?
Mr. Hernandez said that to my husband that they would come back the next day.
Okay. Did they give a time that they would be back?
No.
When the two individuals were on the porch, you were able to see that there was more than one individual on the porch?
Correct.
Okay. Could you see that because of the Ring camera, or could you see it because of where you were standing, or both?
I could see Mr. Hernandez from where I was standing, and I could see both of them through the Ring camera.
Okay. So, at that point in time, the doors closed?
Yes.
Okay. Do you typically have your doors locked at night?
Yes.
Did you have any discussion with your husband about what had just happened?
I was curious as to why they were looking for a gas leak when I didn't smell anything.
Okay. Did either you, or if you're aware, your husband call DTE that evening to see if there were any crews in the area?
No.
Okay. Did you notify anybody else in your family about what had just happened?
No.
Do you go to bed that evening like you typically do?
Yes.
Okay. Do you wake up in the morning?
Yes.
Okay. On the night of October 10th, do you know where your husband's car was parked?
On the side of the driveway by the garage door.
Okay. And is that an area that's visible to the public?
Yes.
In the morning of October 11th, did your husband leave the residence at any time between that evening and the morning of October 11th?
No.
Okay. To your knowledge, the car was not moved between October 10th and October 11th?
October 11th, I had a doctor's appointment, and he had to move his car further down the driveway into the circular driveway so I could get my car out.
Okay. And then he parked it in the driveway?
In the circular driveway.
Did you go to your doctor's appointment?
Yes.
And approximately what time did you return from your doctor's appointment?
About 10.
Okay. Did your husband accompany you, or did you go by yourself to the doctor's appointment?
By myself.
What was your husband's typical routine about going to work? What time would he leave to go?
Around 12 o'clock noon.
Was he staying there for any return of the DTE people?
No.
Okay. What happened after you had returned from the doctor's appointment?
I went to make breakfast, and my husband was watching TV, I believe, and normal routine.
Was there again somebody who came to the front door?
Yes.
What time would you say approximately that was?
10, 11.
In the morning or at night?
In the morning.
Okay. And how was it that you first became aware that somebody was at your front door?
The Ring camera alerted me.
Okay. And you received a Ring notification?
Yes.
Did your husband go to the front door?
Yes.
Where did you go when your husband went to the front door?
I was in the hallway behind him.
Okay. So you were near the front door also?
Yes.
How far would you say you were from the front door when he approached it?
10 feet.
Can you tell us what you remember happening when you're at the front door?
My husband saw them again and recognized them from the night before. And Mrs. Hernandez gave him the clipboard to sign. I didn't see if he signed it or not. And they came in.
Okay.
And they said that they
when you say they came in, were there 2 people, 3 people? How many people came in?
Oh, yeah, 2 people, Mr. Hernandez and Mrs. Zuazo.
And did you recognize them as the same people who were there the night before?
Yes.
And do you see those people in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you please individually point to each one and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
That's Mr. Hernandez there with the beard to the left of the judge.
Okay.
And Mr.
Let me stop you right there. Your Honor, may the record reflect this witness's identified defendant, Hernandez?
The record will reflect that defendant Hernandez has been identified.
And the other individual, do you recognize the second
Yes,
individual?
Mr. Zuazo is at the end of the table.
Your Honor, may the record reflect this witness has identified defendant Zuazo?
The record will reflect that the defendant, Zuazo, has been identified as well. Thank you.
When you're at that front door area, you said they had the clipboard. Did they have any type of other indicia that they were with DTE that you remember?
They had badges that said that they were with DTE, and they had reflective vests, the yellow one.
Okay. And do you recall whether they were wearing masks or not when they were at the front door?
Yes, they were wearing masks.
What happened after Mr. Defendant Hernandez had shown the clipboard to your husband?
They came into the house, Mr. Hernandez and Mrs. Zuazo came into the house, and my husband was going to show them where the basement was.
And why was it, do you know what they had indicated about what they were looking for when they were back the second time?
They needed to check the
objection today, and then to have the speaker identify if the witness knows, rather than a collective debate.
Thank you. Can you please have a rephrase?
Yes. Was anything said about what they were searching for the second time?
They were going...
No, it's a yes or no question.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and who made the statement about what they were searching for the second time?
Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, and what do you recall him saying the second time?
He had to check something on the furnace.
Okay, and do you know where your furnace is located?
Yes.
And where was your furnace located?
In the basement.
Okay. What happened after they had said something about checking the furnace?
My husband went to go show them where the basement was.
Okay, and tell us the path that your husband took in the house to go towards the basement.
From the front door, he walked about 15 feet toward the kitchen, and then he turned left and went down the hallway to the basement door.
Okay. And who, if anybody, went with your husband?
Both Mr. Hernandez and Mrs. Zuazo went with him.
Okay. What happened as your husband approached the door leading down to the basement?
Mr. Zuazo went into the laundry room. I thought he would look for the gas leak by the dryer, but he didn't. And Mr. Hernandez said that he forgot his meter, and he had to go get it from the truck.
Okay. And at that point in time, had anybody started to go down into the basement?
No.
Okay. Did Mr. Hernandez go someplace different after he made that statement?
I don't know exactly where he went. He went to toward the front door.
Okay. And your husband was still there with the defendant Zuazo at that point?
Yes.
And how long would you say it was after defendant Hernandez walked away that he returned? How much time do you think went by?
A minute, less than a minute.
Okay. When he returned, did you notice any type of meter in his hand or anything different than you had seen before?
No.
What happened after Mr. Defendant Hernandez had returned?
My husband and Mr. Zuazo started going down into the basement, and Mr. Hernandez was behind them.
Okay, so your husband was leading the way down the stairs. Is that correct?
Yes.
And behind him was Defendant Zuazo?
Yes.
And behind him was Defendant Hernandez?
Yes.
And where did you go when they proceeded down the stairs?
Went back into the kitchen to finish making breakfast.
Okay. Now, does that door to the is there a door to the downstairs?
Yes.
As best you remember, was that door, did it remain open or did somebody close it?
It was closed.
Okay. And from where you positioned yourself in the kitchen, how far would you say you were from that door leading downstairs at that point?
About 6 feet, 10 feet maybe.
Okay. Not very far?
No, not very far.
Okay. Now, your husband, knowing we all have different manners of speaking. Okay, in your relationship and your experience with your husband, is your husband a soft talker, a loud talker, a normal tone talker? How would you describe his volume?
He's very loud.
Okay. When your husband and the two defendants go down into the basement, do you hear your husband say anything?
No.
Do you hear anybody else say anything?
No.
Do you hear any type of commotion down in the basement?
No.
And of course, as someone who's not great at hearing anymore, the natural question is, how is your hearing?
Diminished somewhat, but no.
Okay. And you didn't hear anything for the time period they were downstairs?
No.
Do you remain at the kitchen table the entire time that everybody was downstairs?
Yes.
How much time would you say, as best you can recollect, because we know you're not looking at your watch and timing things, in your best estimate, how much time do you think they were downstairs before somebody came up the stairs?
I'm going to say about maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. When somebody finally comes up in that 10, 15 minute period of time, who is the first person up the stairs?
Mr. Hernandez.
Okay. And where does Mr. Hernandez go once he's up the stairs?
In the hallway by the basement door.
Okay. Does Mr. Defendant Zuazo come up the stairs?
Yes.
how much time delay after Defendant Hernandez is up is it until Defendant Zuazo appears?
Seconds. He was right behind him.
Okay. What happens once both defendants are up the stairs?
Mr. Hernandez asks me, where is the safe? And I said, we don't have one. And then he said, where is the jewelry? And I said, in the bank at the safety deposit box.
Okay, when he says this, because you're seated some distance away from the top of the stairs, did you stand up at that point?
Yes.
Okay. When you stood up, did you close the gap to the defendants, or did they close the gap on you?
I don't recall.
Okay. How close is Defendant Hernandez when he asks you, where is the safe?
The first time it was about a couple feet.
Okay. And what's the response after you indicate you don't have a safe and the jewelry is in a safety deposit box? What happens then?
He asks me, where's the money?
And when you say he, you're talking about
Mr. Hernandez.
Defendant Hernandez. Okay. What did you say about where's the money?
I said that all we have in the house is what I have in my purse and what my husband has in his pocket.
Okay. Do you recall how much cash approximately you had in your purse that morning?
About $300.
Okay. And your husband would also have it carry cash on him?
Yes.
Would he carry, I mean, I hate to say a normal amount of cash because normal can depend very much on who you are. How much cash would he usually have?
About $5,000.
Okay. Where did you have your cash that morning? Where did you keep it?
In my purse on the kitchen table.
Okay. And did you tell Defendant Hernandez the cash was in your purse?
Yes.
What did you see happen after you said your cash is in your purse?
Again, he asked me, where is the jewelry and where is the cash?
And what was your response then?
The same, that the jewelry wasn't in the house and we didn't have cash except what I told him.
Okay. And what happened next?
I started asking, where's my husband? Where's my husband? And I didn't get a response. And when Mr. Zuazo came up the stairs, I saw blood on his vest. And I started screaming. And Mr. Hernandez hit me in the face.
Okay.
To shut me up.
When Defendant Hernandez hit you on the face, what side of the face did he strike you on?
The left.
Okay. Did you sustain an injury from that?
Yes.
Did you sustain an injury that required medical treatment later?
Yes.
It was a hard hit?
Yes.
What happened after you were struck?
He asked me, before he removed his hand from my mouth, he asked me if I would stop screaming. And I said yes. And he sat me at the kitchen table.
Okay. Did either of them respond to you about what your husband was doing downstairs?
No.
What happened then?
I take that what I just said back because I was asking where's my husband, and Mr. Zuazo said he was sleeping.
Okay. What happens after Defendant Hernandez tells you to stop yelling and screaming?
He sits me at the kitchen table.
Okay. What happens to you while you're seated at the table?
He takes my watch off, my iPhone watch.
When you say he, again?
Mr. Hernandez, I'm sorry.
Okay. And then what happens? He takes your watch off?
Yes, he takes my watch off and puts it across the table where I cannot reach it, and takes my cell phone and puts it in his pocket.
Okay. Then what happens?
Then he asks me if I have the car keys, and I said they're connected to my purse. So he takes the car keys to my car.
Okay. And what kind of car were you driving?
Infiniti.
When you say he took the keys, is it keys on a fob? Is it just a fob? How do you describe that?
The keys were attached to my purse.
Okay. The keys themselves, did it have keys to the house on there, or was it just the car fob?
No, it had the house key.
Okay. So you saw Defendant Hernandez take those items?
Yes.
Did you see anybody go through your purse?
Mr. Hernandez did.
And did you see him take cash from your purse?
Yes.
What happens after he's taken the cash from your purse?
That part's a little foggy, but I know that he taped up my legs together with duct tape, black duct tape, and my wrists together.
Okay. When you say he, don't. It's okay. It's natural. It's not natural to testify. It's natural to talk.
Mr. Hernandez.
Yes. Okay. And you said it was black duct tape?
Yes.
Was that duct tape that you had in your house?
No.
What parts of your body were taped up by Defendant Hernandez?
My ankles together and my wrists together.
Okay. Where was Defendant Zuazo when this was taking place?
He was upstairs in the master bedroom.
Okay. What happens after your duct tape?
Mr. Zuazo was upstairs in the master bedroom, and I could hear the drawers hitting the floor. And then Mr. Hernandez was kind of nonchalant and opened one of the drawers in the kitchen, kind of looked at it and shut it. And Mr. Zuazo came down the stairs from upstairs.
Again, we understand you're not timing things, but what's your best estimate how long defendant Zuazo was upstairs before he returned from upstairs?
Minutes. It wasn't very long.
Okay. Can you describe to us, did you have some jewelry in your master bedroom?
Yes.
And where was that kept?
In the jewelry box.
Okay. And what type of jewelry did you have in your bedroom?
It was costume jewelry.
So the jewelry that was up there wasn't very valuable, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Did you later go into the master bedroom and see it being disheveled and things askew?
Not that day, no.
Later you did?
Yes.
Okay. And were you missing jewelry?
Yes.
Later in the investigation, past this day, do detectives from the sheriff's office end up showing you photographs of jewelry that was recovered?
Yes.
And did you identify items of jewelry that were recovered that were yours?
Yes.
And those items were missing after the 11th from your room?
Yes.
When defendant Zuazo comes back downstairs, what happens next?
They're getting ready to leave, and they go into the garage. Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Zuazo go, no they don't. They want me to put me in the closet. And I was standing up, but I couldn't move because of the bindings on my legs. So he sat me back down in a chair.
And you know what I'm going to ask you now? Which he are we talking about?
Which what?
Which he?
Oh, Mr. Hernandez.
Okay. And then what happened?
Mr. Hernandez sat me in the chair, and then they walked to the garage.
Okay. Can you hear the garage door open?
Yes.
Okay. How long would you say they were in the garage before the garage door was opening?
Before it was opening?
How long do you think they spent in the garage before you could hear the garage door opening?
Seconds.
Okay. And they departed at that point?
I think I didn't see him, but I think Mr. Hernandez searched the car.
Okay. After they exited the garage, did they come back into the residence?
No.
Okay. Prior to the dates of either the 10th or the 11th, had you ever seen defendant Hernandez or defendant Zuazo before?
No.
Prior to the dates of the 10th and the 11th, had either of them ever been inside your house?
No.
Inside your residence, did you have in the basement area any type of zip ties?
No.
After the 11th, was your husband's side firearm missing from the residence?
Yes.
The Ring camera that was part of your residence, did you turn over that Ring camera video to the detectives?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review People's Exhibit number 1, those Ring camera videos?
Yes.
Do they accurately reflect what was on those videos at the time?
Yes.
Your Honor, the people would move to publish People's Exhibit number 1, which is the Ring cameras videos.
Is it stipulated here? Okay.
I have no objection to that.
Okay. That can be published, thanks.
In the restaurant, so when she thought Rita was her.
It's DTE. DTE. Kind of, when you guys will be coming around. DTE, I don't know, I think they're flying.
Oh, you got you guys can
Are you Mr. Hussein Murray? That's it. We gotta check your house. You have the house for the meter? Thank you. On the seat. Yeah. I don't want to bother you guys for late, but we had to check the outside.
Yeah, I understand. I'd love to catch them. You were on catch.
Listen, I did. How you doing today, sir? I'm alright. So, you want to read? Just to give us consent to check the inside of the home. So what we have to do is we have to check for our capacity. Come on, man.
And Mrs. Murray, just to finish up, the taking of your items from your residence that day, that was against your will and against your consent?
Yes, against my will.
When you were struck, that was against your will?
Yes.
And being restrained, that was also against your will?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. Cross-exam. Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Mr. Petrofessa, the prosecutor, asked you a question similar, but I just want to make sure that the record is clear. So you were asked if you had ever met Mr. Hernandez or Mr. Zuazo prior to that date. Do you remember being asked that question?
Yes.
And you answered no. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So you have been referring to the two people that were in your house as Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Zuazo. Were those names that were provided to you from the prosecutor or from the police department? Those weren't names that you came up with yourself. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you were given the names of Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Zuazo, correct?
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cross-exam.
Thank you. Mrs. Murray, my name is Michael McCarthy. I represent Joshua Zuazo. I have some questions to ask you here this morning regarding your testimony. And if I do not make myself clear, please tell me that, and then I will rephrase the question, okay?
Yes.
Now, we just watched the ring video of what occurred on the night of the 10th of October. And you were, as I understand your direct testimony, but you correct me if I'm wrong, you were upstairs on the second floor with a good view of the front door where your husband answered the door. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so you were able to see one person in the doorway. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you didn't see a second person there, correct?
No.
And but you've had an opportunity since this incident occurred to review your own ring video, correct?
Yes.
And during the course of the investigation that was conducted by the Rochester Hills Police Department, the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, you've come to have an understanding about who it is that is charged in this case with the crimes that were committed at your home on the 10th day or the 11th day of October, correct?
Yes.
So, in just following up on the question was just asked by Mr. Hernandez, attorney, regarding your identification of individuals, you didn't know Mr. Zuazo at all, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't see him the day or the night before this incident took place, correct?
Only through the ring camera.
Right, but you didn't see, in that instance, that night, you would agree that the person who's shown in the ring camera, the second person, not the person that's at the door, but the person in the background, is pretty fully, his face is completely covered, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you can't make an identification of Mr. Zuazo for the night of October the 10th because you didn't see enough of the individual's face to make an identification, correct?
Correct.
And what you do know now, you have information that leads you to believe that Mr. Zuazo is the person that was present that night because you've reviewed ring video and you've had many interviews with representatives of the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, and also the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, correct?
Yes.
And you've gained this knowledge that you've brought to the court today, this ability to speak and make identifications because of some information that's been provided to you regarding identification, correct?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, you've been able to speak with confidence this morning regarding who the individuals that came to your home were, because of the fact that during the course of the investigation that's gone on since October the 11th, you've gained a lot of knowledge from the information provided not only by yourself to the law enforcement officials, but also information you received back during interviews, correct?
Some information.
Okay. You didn't know either man's name, right?
No.
Before the investigation was conducted, and then information from the Sheriff's Department, the Prosecutor's Office, Police Department, that was provided to you to give you that knowledge, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the part of your testimony regarding October the 10th, or 11th rather, you identified Mr. Zuazo as, this person that you have identified as Mr. Zuazo is the person who went upstairs into the master bedroom, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were seated at the kitchen table at that time, correct?
Yes.
And that was before or after your ankles and your wrists were bound with tape?
Before.
Before. Okay, so then after that second individual came downstairs, then you were bound up. Is that correct?
During the time that Mrs. Zuazo went upstairs, in between the time Mr. Hernandez bound my legs and wrists.
Okay. And going to this identification thing one more time, you would agree that Mr. Hernandez, who is seated at the council table there, is a person of fairly unique physical characteristics, correct? A very large man.
Yes.
Okay. And you saw he was wearing, or rather, this person who came to your door on October the 10th during the evening hours at 10 or 10:30 at night, he was wearing a small mask, correct?
Mr. Who?
The person that you've identified to be Mr. Hernandez.
Oh, Mr. Hernandez.
When he came to the door that night, was wearing a rather small mask, just the kind of a mask somebody might wear in COVID times.
No,
correct?
Mr. Hernandez wore respirator type mask. So, heavy mask.
During the night of October the 10th?
Yes.
So, it's your testimony the same person that came to the door on the night of the 10th was the person who came to the door on the morning of the 11th, correct?
Repeat that?
The person that was knocking on the door,
yes,
or ringing the doorbell, whichever it was, that came on the night of the 10th was the same person who came to the door on the morning of the 11th,
yes,
correct? And it's the same distinctive sized individual, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree that the second man does not have that same distinctive physical characteristic, correct?
Correct.
He's more of a normal sized person. He's not exceedingly tall or short, correct?
Correct.
Just a normal height. And his physical stature in terms of his weight, pretty average, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So not as easy to make an identification of the second man as it was to make the identification of this very uniquely physically characterized individual that you've identified to be Mr. Hernandez, correct? Let me break that down. It's easier to identify a person who's huge.
Yes.
Right? You don't see people like that every day, right?
Right.
And this person comes to your house 2 days in a row, right?
Correct.
And you saw enough of him on the first night to know that he was the same person on the second morning, correct?
Correct.
The second man, not like that, correct? You can't make that identification and say for sure that the man that was there the night before is the same man that was there during the day of the 11th, correct?
As far as I can recollect glancing at Mr. Zuazo on the night of the 10th, somehow I had a glance at him. He was the one with the light mask, the small mask.
On the night of the 10th?
Of the 10th.
Okay, thank you. Upstairs, you could just hear footsteps, correct?
Yes.
When you were in the kitchen. And yet, you're able to testify today that those footsteps were up in the master bedroom. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you were in the kitchen, you couldn't see that, correct? You couldn't see the activity that was going on upstairs.
I could hear it. I couldn't see it.
I got that, and I understand that you could hear it, but the question is, you couldn't see it, correct?
Correct.
All right. And so you learned later, through the investigation and through your own return to your home, that things were in disarray in the master bedroom of your home, correct?
Correct.
Now, is it possible that you made a connection between what you heard on the day, 11th of October, and what you saw on the day that you were able to return to your home after being hospitalized, and came to the conclusion that it was Mr., or at least the second man, who was up in the master bedroom because you saw the damage there?
Correct.
All right. Is it a possibility that you put those two things together, what you heard downstairs and what you saw later, to make the testimony that you gave today to be that I heard him up in the master bedroom?
Yes.
Thank you. And I want to make sure you understood that question. You put those two things together, right? You heard the noise on the 11th. You saw the damage on a subsequent date, correct?
Yes.
And you put those two things together and you came to the conclusion, oh, he was up in the master bedroom while that was going on, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, you've already testified in direct examination that you didn't know either one of these two people, correct, before this incident?
I have a hard time hearing.
Oh, I'll speak up. You've already testified on direct examination that you never encountered either one of the two individuals that came into your home that day, correct?
Correct.
And this was a very upsetting experience, correct?
Correct.
And you had concerns while it was going on about what had happened to your husband, correct?
Correct.
And you were screaming at one point, according to your direct testimony, correct?
Correct.
And then you yourself were struck by who you identified to be Mr. Hernandez, correct?
Correct.
And you sustained a serious enough injury that it required your hospitalization for a period of time.
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that this experience in your life is the most upsetting experience you have ever had?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just briefly, Your Honor, just want to follow up on just a couple things that Mr. McCarthy brought up. He indicated something about your conclusion that defendant Zuazo was going through your bedroom while you were down in the kitchen. Did you hear that line of questioning?
Yes.
For that conclusion, did defendant Hernandez ever go upstairs?
No.
Well, okay, so that's how you draw the conclusion. Is that
correct?
Okay. Also, Mr. McCarthy had asked something about identification with Mr. Zuazo. After defendant Hernandez and defendant Zuazo come up from the basement, do you have any recollection of defendant Zuazo's mask being in a different place than when it was when he went down the stairs?
My recollection is, I think so.
And what do you think you saw?
That the mask was missing.
And that it wasn't in place when he was back in front of you after coming up the stairs?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any doubt in your mind that defendant Zuazo was one of the two individuals in your house that day?
No.
Do you have any doubt in your mind that defendant Hernandez was one of those two individuals who were in your house that day?
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that one question regarding the mask? Mrs. Murray, as to the mask, you just testified now on direct examination that perhaps Mr. Zuazo's mask was not on his face when he came back upstairs?
Correct. I think so.
Did you ever give any information along those lines to the investigators from the Sheriff's Department?
Recently.
Recently? Okay. Yeah. And how recently was that?
Last week.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Anything else in this witness? Thank you. And thank you. You can be excused.
Thank you.
People call Deputy Colton. May I stop?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Can you raise your right hand? Can you take your name for the record?
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you spell your first and your last name for the record?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm sorry.
And do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
My witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
And okay. You good? Can you, sir, where are you currently employed? Oakland County Sheriff's Office. How long have you been in the Sheriff's Office? 20 years. And prior to your appointment with the Sheriff's Office, do you have any other law enforcement experience? Okay. And where are you currently assigned? Here in Rochester Hills substation. Okay. How long have you been assigned with the substation? Off and on about, I'd say about 12 years or so. Okay. I want to direct attention to the morning of October 11th of this year. Do you recall that day? Yes. Okay. On that particular day, where you did you receive a dispatch to 3730 Newcastle? I did. Okay. What was that nature of that dispatch? I was dispatched to a robbery at this location on that day. And when you first received that dispatch, where were you at? I was in the area at the time when the call came out. Right. When that call came out, did you go to that location? I did. But how long did it take you to arrive to that location after receiving that dispatch? Less than 5 minutes. Okay. And the information in that dispatch. Dispatch, what was the nature of that information that you had? It said a lady called indicating that she was the house was robbed, and she was duct taped around her wrist, and her husband was in the house, she believed, at the time. Regarding this incident. And on that morning of the 11th, were you wearing the same Oakland County Sheriff's Department uniform you had on? Yes. Okay. And when you arrived to that location, you recall about what time of day that was? I was during the day, so probably late afternoon, I believe. And do you recall what shift you were working that day? Days. And when does the day shift start and when does that end? 7 a.m. for June. Okay. And so do you recall if it was earlier in your day shift or later? It was later in the day shift. I believe it was after 12:30 maybe. And when you arrived at the location, had you ever been at that location before? No. Okay. When you arrived there, did you arrive there by yourself or did you have a partner with you? No, I was the first one there. I was by myself. When you arrived, where did you park? I parked, I believe, a house down from the actual home. So parking house down from that home, what did you do next upon parking? What did you do next after parking? I walked up to the house, knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, I believe. No answer. Then I started to walk towards the back to see if I could see anything. But I then called the dispatch to have the person they were talking to come to the front door. So they were still on the phone with that person? Correct. Okay. Did someone come to the door? Yes. Okay. And did that person open up the door for you? She did. What, if anything, did you observe about that person when you opened up the door? Her wrist was still duct taped, and she had a bruise under, I can't remember which eye. She had a bruise and I saw a little blood, and she was very upset. Okay. And was she still on the phone when she was. Okay. What happened next? At that point, she told me that some DTE workers came last night, and they came back today, and then she said they got robbed. Well, she said she got robbed, and she said she believes her husband's still in the house, but she's not certain, and that they already left, and she was still talking to my dispatcher with the phone. So I said, "You can get off now," and then I cut the duct tape off of her wrist, and then we stood by the foyer area of the home to wait for the rest of my partners to arrive so we can clear the house and see what else is going on. And did more deputies arrive? They did. Okay. About how long after you were after you cut the duct tape off her wrist did they arrive on scene? That was a quick response. I think the second officer showed up minutes after. And upon the other deputies arriving to the scene that day, what happened next? Once we removed her from the home, we began to clear the first level of the home. When you say clear the home, what does that mean? Checking the area to make sure everything's secure, everything's safe at that point, and we're still trying to find the husband because she indicated, again, she didn't know if he was taken by them or still in the house. She believed that he was in the basement because that's where he was last at when she last saw him with the two guys that were in the home. Okay. When you guys were clearing the house, what portion of the house were you charged with clearing?
Well, the way it normally works is, depending on how many bodies you have, depending on how many officers you have, determines how you're going to go about clearing in terms of how many go into a room, how many are going to clear the certain area in the first level, because it was colonial. So we're dealing with the first level, second level, and the basement. So we started with the first level. We cleared that area, and then when my partner showed up, we then went downstairs.
And who's your partner that you're speaking of?
It was Sergeant Myers, Deputy Sinai, Deputy Scruggs, Deputy Catholic. I want to say one more, but I can't remember.
And so it's based on how many deputies are on scene.
Yes.
How the clearing goes.
Yes.
Okay. And did you go to the upper level?
We did.
Okay. And did you eventually make your way to the basement?
We did the first level first and went to the basement next.
So the basement was cleared second?
Correct.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you observe on your way to the basement?
So before we even went down to the basement, because we cleared the first level, and then I stood by the entrance to the basement, and I observed blood being on the wall and the handrail before you went downstairs.
So you saw blood on the wall and the handrail before heading to the basement?
Correct.
Okay. And do you make your way to the basement?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you observe while you were down in the basement?
So once we went downstairs to clear the basement, one of my partners observed the person laying on the ground in like a laundry area, utility room area.
And did you observe this person as well?
I did.
Okay. And what did you observe of this person?
I observed the male being duct taped around the wrist, around his ankles, and around his mouth. I thought it was duct tape around his nose, but it wasn't. And a lot of blood.
There was a lot of blood in the area?
Yes, it was.
Did you notice, were you able to determine if he had a pulse?
I checked both his wrist and his neck, and I couldn't tell at the time. I don't think I had a pulse with that.
Did you observe anything on him? Did you observe a gun or anything on him?
There was an empty gun holster around his waist. I was looking for that and a shell casing possibly because I didn't know the nature at the time.
Did you observe any shell casing or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Upon locating that person and checking for a pulse, what did you do next in your investigation?
After that, the Rochester Hills Fire Department came down and tried to render aid too. After I looked at him. Then we went upstairs. I'm sorry, before that we went upstairs to clear the second floor. After that.
Did you observe anything regarding your investigation upstairs when you cleared it?
No, nothing up there. Rooms were disheveled. Other than that, nothing stood out.
Okay. I have no quick questions, John.
Good morning.
Hello.
So you just testified about your involvement in being the first officer. Did your involvement in this case end on that day? Other than obviously appearing here to testify.
After that, I wrote a report about it. Other than that, I didn't have no other involvement at that time.
Okay. So you've never had any interview or any interactions with Mr. Carlos Hernandez, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. President.
I have no questions for this witness.
Thank you. Anything else?
No retract based on that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can call Valerie Maya to say.
Thank you. Can you state your first and last name and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Valerie Mayra, V-A-L-E-R-I-E-M-A-Y-R-A.
Thank you. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may have a seat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you do me a favor and just speak up as much as you can because the table has to be able to hear what you're saying too, okay?
Yes, I'll try.
Can you tell us how you're employed?
I am employed with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office as a forensic lab investigator.
And can you tell the court what that means to be a forensic lab investigator?
So I am assigned to the latent print unit where I will process and examine items of evidence for the presence of latent prints, such as fingerprints, and ultimately try to identify the source of those prints. I also am part of the crime scene team, so I will respond to and process major crime scenes within the county.
And how many major crime scenes have you been a part of at this point in your career?
Several dozen.
Okay. And some of those are homicide crime scenes?
Yes, mostly.
And I think you and I have had some homicide cases in the past, in fact. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention back to October 11th of 2024. Were you called out by the Sheriff's Office in that capacity that day?
I was.
And can you tell us approximately what time it was that you arrived at where you were called to?
Would I be able to refer to my report to access
Yes.
that?
Let me also, if I can approach, you did do a report for this, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And would that also help refresh your recollections?
I think if you're asking about a specific time, that would be in my notes.
Okay, but you did do a report also?
I did.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit number 4 if I can approach. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, is that the report that you authored?
Yes.
And that doesn't help refresh your recollection as far as the time, though. So can you look at whatever items you have present that would help indicate what time you responded?
Yes. It looks like I arrived there at 2:18 in the afternoon.
Okay. And when you say there, what was the address that you responded to?
3730 Newcastle Drive in Rochester Hills.
Okay. Is that located in the city of Rochester Hills in Oakland County, Michigan?
Yes.
And what did you first observe when you arrived at that location?
When I arrived, there were several first responding officers around. It was a large home and in a residential neighborhood. And initially, we were kind of just there to get the summary of what had occurred before making entry.
Okay. And when you say we, who else are you referring to when you say we?
That would be my teammates on my crime scene response team.
Okay. And as far as teammates, I know we're all employed by Oakland County. But when you're talking about teammates, you're not talking about deputies or detectives. Are you specifically talking about folks who work in the evidence collection?
Yes, that would be some individuals from the forensic lab and also some deputies who are a part of a crime scene response team.
Okay. And did you obtain information from deputies and detectives at the scene about what had happened?
Yes.
Did you, as part of evidence collection, go through the house itself?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you remember about going through the residence and things of evidentiary significance that you saw as you did that?
Sure. Upon entry, the main level didn't have too much that was observed evidentiary-wise. We found a couple pieces of what looked like black electrical tape on the main level. Upstairs.
And when you say you saw that tape, what room was that tape located? That
was in the dining area of the kitchen. So there was a dining room and then there was a dining area in the kitchen itself. So that tape was found there and then also in an adjacent hallway.
Okay.
And then upstairs, the master bedroom looked like it had been ransacked. It had several drawers pulled out of the dressers and overturned, and I assume the contents that were in those drawers were kind of strewn about the room. There was also a apparent blood swipe mark in a spare bedroom that's also upstairs. And then downstairs is where we found the decedent.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked, if I can approach People's Exhibit number 3A. All these exhibits have been shown to both counsel beforehand. Do you recognize this as a vehicle parked in front of that residence?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3B. Do you recognize this as the entryway to that house, the front?
I do.
Okay, you indicated that you went downstairs, is that correct?
Yes,
into the basement?
To the basement.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3C. Do you recognize that photograph as the individual that you saw in the basement?
Yes.
Okay, now there's a set of stairs that go into the basement, and then you see the decedent's body down there. As best as you can give us an estimate, how much distance is it from the bottom of those stairs to where the decedent is laying?
We didn't take measurements, but if I were to estimate, it was about 10 feet.
And that accurately reflects what you saw?
Yes.
Did you, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3D. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And can you tell us what's in Exhibit 3D?
That is an empty firearm holster that was on the decedent's hip.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3E. Do you recognize that as the head area of the decedent?
Yes.
Does that accurately reflect what you saw?
Yes.
There was other evidence of blood in the basement, not just at the decedent's body. Is that correct?
Yes, several objects had apparent blood spatter.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3G. Do you recognize that exhibit?
I do.
And can you tell us where that blood is located?
That is on the faucet of a sink that was on the ground lying near the decedent.
Okay, and when you say sink on the ground, is that an operable sink or inoperable sink?
It appeared inoperable at the time.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3H. Can you tell us what that is?
That is the weights and the weight bar that were semi underneath the victim after we had moved him.
Okay. And what appears to be blood by that?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3I. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, that was the floor underneath the decedent after he had been moved.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3J. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes.
And what's in that exhibit?
That is the decedent's hands, which are bound at the wrists.
And how are they bound?
With black duct tape type material and also with zip ties.
And I'll show you the last exhibit, exhibit number 3K. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And can you tell us what's in that exhibit?
That is the decedent's feet, one which has a shoe on it, and then the matching shoe, which is nearby.
Your Honor, at this time, the people move Exhibit 3A through 3K into evidence and publish to court.
Any objections?
No objection for exam purposes.
I have no objection, but I didn't hear what G was.
Counsel.
Yeah. 3G.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Identify.
He did not hear what G was. What is 3G?
The sink that we discussed earlier today.
Okay, thank you. The exhibits will be admitted into evidence, having heard no objection.
And I think I did, but in case I didn't, I moved Exhibit number 1 into evidence too. I know we published it.
You did, and that was admitted.
Now, as far as evidence that you actually collected, could you tell us what you actually collected from the scene?
Yes. Do you just want me to go through them one through three?
Yes, if you collected evidence and you gave it a designated number, if you could do both so that we know what number goes to what piece of evidence.
Okay, the number that I numbered it at the scene?
Yeah, as numbered in your report.
Okay, so number 1 were some tape pieces that were found on the kitchen floor. Number 2 was a piece of tape that was found in the hallway that led to the garage. Number 3 was a section of tape that was found on the kitchen island. Number 4 were a pair of glasses that were found on a shutter on the basement floor. Number 5 were what we refer to as large zip ties. There were 2 sets of zip ties on the basement floor. There was one that was larger than the other, so number 5 was the larger set and number 6 was the smaller set. Number 7 was a section of tape that was found on burlap fabric that was in the basement. Number 8 was a roll of tape that was found on the basement floor. Number 9 was an apparent bloody impression that was found on the basement floor under the large set of zip ties. Number 10 was an apparent bloody impression on a ceiling tile that was found near the victim. Number 11 was apparent blood that was found on the shutter near the victim. Number 12 was apparent blood found on the side of a box that was on the basement floor. Number 13 was apparent blood found on that sink faucet. Number 14 was a roll of tape that was found in that sink. Number 15 were plastic bags that were also found in that sink. Number 16 was apparent blood that was found in a swipe mark in that spare bedroom on the second floor. Number 17, we collected DNA swabs that were on the duct tape that were binding the victim's hands. 5A were DNA swabs taken from the large set of zip ties, which was number 5. 6A were DNA swabs taken from item 6, which were the smaller set of zip ties. 18 were weights with the bar, and that was found near the body. 19 were two individual weights that were stacked on top of each other, found under the body after it was moved. And number 20 was a ring that was found near the body as well.
Okay. In addition to doing the DNA swabbing, was there any attempts to lift latent fingerprints?
Yes, there were. Sorry.
And that was attempted at the scene. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're involved with the processing and comparison of any fingerprints in this case. Is that correct?
I am.
Okay. And at this time, those results have not been completed. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. People would move People's Exhibit number 4 into evidence. I don't have any other questions.
Any objection for exam purposes?
Oh, I have no objection either.
Thank you. Exhibit 4 is admitted.
I didn't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. Any cross-exam? Thank you.
Ma'am, just some clarification as to number 17. You indicated that it was duct tape that was found on the victim. Are you able to elaborate which victim? Obviously, there's 2 in this case. Was it the male or the female, if you know?
It was the deceased male.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Cross-exam.
Deputy Maya, my name is Michael McCarthy. I represent one of the defendants in this case, Joshua Zuazo, and I just have a few questions to ask you here today regarding your testimony. If I don't make myself clear, please tell me that. I'll rephrase the question, okay?
Okay.
Now, in this report, there are, and you've just itemized all of the things that were collected, and mentioned that they were shown on this sketch that's part of exhibit number 4. And what I just wanting to ask you is if you could tell me where the items number 18, 19, and 20, which are the weights with the bar, 2 weights on the floor, and the ring, which is number 20. If you could just show me on the sketch where those items were found. I know the report says near the body, but while all the other items that were in the basement are identified in the sketch, those 3 are not. If you could just direct me to where it was that those were located.
18, 19, and 20 were found partially under the body, if not completely under the body, which is why they aren't showing up on the sketch.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Now, you mentioned that there was some fingerprints that were taken, but you don't have a report yet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Where exactly were these fingerprints? Well, first of all, let me ask you this. You're a fingerprint, that's your responsibility, your area of expertise in the forensic science laboratory, correct?
Yes.
And so in your investigation at this house in Rochester Hills that day, where did you obtain prints that you could actually examine? In other words, latent prints that you found on the scene?
So we collected the plastic that was found in the sink that was next to the body.
Okay.
Plastic is a good surface for leaving fingerprints. So I collected those items and I processed those for fingerprints and have developed several fingerprints on that plastic.
So the items, it's a singular type of thing that from which you've obtained the fingerprints that have to be examined yet.
Yes.
And that is plastic that was found in the sink that was laying on the floor, not in operation.
That's correct.
And this plastic, was it related to anything that you could observe, or you came to a conclusion it was related to?
It was just in the sink, which contained apparent blood. It also had the roll of duct tape that was found in the sink was kind of on top of that plastic, kind of sunken in, and it all had apparent blood on it. So I don't know the evidentiary value to it until I'm able to test it.
And I understand that. And this plastic, did it appear to be the type of plastic that covers an item before it's purchased, or was it plastic that is like cling wrap that you use to wrap up food?
So the plastic consisted of 3 items. One was just a Home Depot grocery bag type of plastic.
Okay.
One was a deflated red inflatable. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was something that could be inflated. And then there was a large piece of clear plastic. I'm not sure what it's used for. It's kind of a tarp type of deal. It might be laid down for if somebody's painting or something, but it was a very large piece of clear plastic, which is where I found all of the prints that I developed.
Okay, so the ones you were able to develop came from this tarp type plastic, for lack of a better term.
Correct.
And not from the Home Depot bag.
Correct.
And not from the inflatable item.
That's right.
Thank you. I have nothing to do.
Thank you.
No reason, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you. You can be excused.
Your Honor, the people about to call the medical examiner, I just want to give that notice to the family because they're not pleasant details that are going to have to be testified to. No photos will be shown, but if anybody does not want to hear the details, this will be the time to exit the courtroom before we start testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. You can call Dr. Bryan.
First and last name and spell your first and last name for the court reporter.
Shauna Bryan, SHAUNA BRYAN.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Examiner.
For Oakland County, approximately 5 years.
Have you had any experience prior to that?
Yes, in fellowship. I did a 1-year fellowship in Denver, Colorado.
And have you testified in courts before?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us basically what the duties of a medical examiner are when it comes to performing an autopsy?
Sure. A medical examiner is there to perform medical legal autopsies, that meaning cause and manner of death. We take evidence and investigate cases and do as such, and then print reports.
Okay. And how many autopsies would you say you've done at this point in time?
Maybe a couple thousand.
And have you been qualified as an expert in the courts of Michigan?
Yes, they have.
How many times would you say you've been qualified as an expert in the courts of Michigan or any other jurisdiction?
Maybe around 10.
And your expertise is in forensic pathology?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, people would tender this witness as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
Any objections? No.
No, Your Honor, I have no objection. For purposes of the exam.
Thank you. This witness is admitted as an expert in that field.
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to direct your attention back to October 12th of this year. Were you working as a medical examiner that day?
Yes, it was.
And were you assigned the responsibilities of doing an autopsy for an individual named Hussein Murray?
Yes, I was.
And was that case assigned a separate, distinct autopsy number for Oakland County's records?
Yes.
And was that number 246922?
Yes, it is.
When you first conduct an autopsy, do you do observations of how the decedent has come in?
Yes.
And can you recall how you remember seeing the decedent for the first time when he came in?
He came in fully clothed, just it hadn't been touched from the scene. Whatever was there on the scene, that's how he came in.
Okay. And what did you notice that was distinct and unusual about when he came in?
He had duct tape around his face, covering his mouth. He had duct tape around his hands and feet, also zip ties around his hands and paper bags covering his hands. And he was fully clothed, had blood on him.
Okay. And just while he was still clothed and had not been cleaned up, was there any evidence of injury that you could see?
There was just blood on him at that point.
And your findings you end up placing into a autopsy report, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit number 2. Is that the autopsy report that you compiled for this case?
Yes, it is. Yes.
As far as the basic physical observations, did you determine what the victim's, Mr. Murray's age was at the time?
Yes.
And how old was he?
Approximately, he came in and he looked the age of 72 years old.
Did you determine a weight?
Yes.
And what was his weight?
I could refer to.
Yes, if that helps refresh.
We do weigh everyone who comes in, and he is 295 pounds.
And did you determine the height?
Yes.
And what was the height determination?
72 inches.
After that, did you start looking for evidence of injury?
Yes.
And can you tell us, when you were looking at Mr. Murray's head, what you noticed as far as evidence of injury?
So evidence of injury is a lot blunt force injury to the head, which are contusions, bruisings to the face, lacerations around the jaw, around the left side of the scalp and the back of the scalp, and he had fractures of his bone.
Okay, and which bones were fractured?
The jaw.
The jawbone. Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 2A. Ask you if you recognize that as the number designating this case for your records?
Yes, that's it.
I'll show you what's been marked as exhibit 2B. Do you recognize 2B?
Yes.
Can you tell us what 2B is?
That's a photograph, unwashed, of Mr. Murray.
I'll show you what's been marked as 2C. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, it's a photograph of the top of his body with his hands tied.
I'll show you what's been marked as exhibit 2D. Do you recognize that?
Yes, that's a facial shot of Mr. Murray after he's been cleaned.
I'll show you what's been marked as 2E. Do you recognize 2E?
Yes.
And what is shown in 2E?
This shows the bottom inside lip of Mr. Murray and the injuries there.
I'll show you what's been marked as 2F. You can tell us what you see in 2F.
That is the laceration or torn part of the scalp of Mr. Murray.
And do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And finally, photograph 2G, do you recognize that?
Yes, that's the other laceration in his scalp.
Your Honor, the people, for purposes of exam, would move exhibit 2 and then 2A through 2G into evidence.
Any objections? No objections for purposes.
No objection for exhibit.
Okay, and those exhibits, having heard no objection, those exhibits are admitted.
Okay, I'm going to leave the photographs up there for you just as far as reference point. You indicated that you saw injury to the head?
Yes.
Okay, did you see any internal evident injuries?
Yes.
And what were the internal injuries that you saw?
In the head, when we open the scalp, we reflect it back, and they call it subcutaneous hemorrhage. He had diffuse hemorrhage all over the scalp, and there's two muscles here that are also under the scalp that had hemorrhage in them.
Did you notice any fractures internally?
Not, other than his jawbone, no.
Okay. What about the neck area? Did you examine the neck area?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us what injuries you observed, if any, at the neck area?
On the neck, he has diffuse bruising from the jaw going down to about the collarbones and abrasions underneath all of what we call the strap muscles in the neck that connect certain bones to the head so you can move your neck. There's hemorrhage and all of that, bleeding. Underneath that, there's something called the hyoid bone, which is a U-shaped bone that sits high up in the throat. Both sides of these bones are fractured.
Okay. Had you ever seen crushing like that before?
I have in other cases, yes.
Okay. And what kind of force or pressure does it take to do that?
The kind of force and pressure it takes is something specifically on the neck, which is why I list neck compression as the cause of death. It's something like a strangulation in your hands or your foot or your knee or some kind of object specifically placed on the neck and crushing it. That's the force it takes to break that bone.
Okay. The photographs that you've identified, there's some injuries to the top of the skull. How would you say that was done by blunt force trauma?
Yes, that's blunt force trauma.
Is that consistent with using an object to create that injury?
Yes.
Is that consistent with using the butt of a gun to create that injury?
Yes.
For the cause of death, what did you determine the cause of death was?
Neck compression.
Okay, and when you're talking about neck compression, how long would it take for that compression to last to cause death?
It depends on the state of the person. He's tied up. He's older. He probably can't struggle and fight back as much. So I'd say a matter of minutes, like less than 10 minutes, I would say, if you're firmly holding onto the neck for a long period of time.
And through your examination, was there a way to tell whether or not Mr. Murray was conscious and still breathing when this attack was taking place?
He was conscious and still breathing up until the point he asphyxiates, however long that takes by the neck compression. I know this because the injuries to the face and the neck, he's still breathing and inhaling because in his lungs there's a lot of blood.
And did you determine a manner of death?
Yes.
And what did you determine as manner of death?
Homicide.
The injuries that you saw of the blunt force trauma, I know we had talked about an object being used to cause it. Are those injuries consistent with somebody being stomped while they're on the ground?
Yes, can be.
Is there anything inconsistent from what you saw with somebody being stomped on the ground?
No.
I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. Cross-exam.
Let me just have one moment.
Sure.
Good morning. Good morning. The only question I have, obviously you've just testified that the cause of death was neck compression. I know in cases that I previously handled, especially with choking or asphyxiation, you do see markings from fingers or some type of imprints on the neck. Was any of that found in this particular case?
No.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cross-exam.
Thank you. Doctor, my name is Michael McCarthy. I'm the attorney representing one of the co-defendants in this case, Joshua Zuazo. I have a few questions to ask you here this morning regarding your testimony. If I don't make myself clear, please tell me that, and I'll rephrase the question, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. I have some questions about the 10-minute period that you estimated during which the neck compression was ongoing before death. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so how is it that you're able to make that estimate of time that it would take 10 minutes for the decedent to have actually died?
I don't know specifically that it took him that. I'm saying if you're unable to fight or you're unconscious for some reason and somebody's holding a pressure to your neck, it's not going to take much time to die from that and asphyxiate.
Would the fact that, I noted in another part before you got to the cause and the manner of death in your report, you examined the heart of the decedent, is that correct?
Yes.
And you noted that he had arteriosclerotic disease advanced, is that correct?
Yes, he does.
And so that puts a person, and this is a man who is 72 years of age, in a compromised physical condition, correct? So that type of heart trouble?
Yes, but he also had bypass grafts that were pain.
Well, I understand that. In fact, I think there was 3 bypasses that you noted in the autopsy protocol, correct? But the bypasses didn't cure the arteriosclerotic disease because you noted that as well, correct?
That's correct, but they bypassed the disease part of the arteries. They don't have anything to do with his death.
Okay, so you note that he's got this disease, but he's actually got a perfectly functioning heart at the time that October the 11th rolled around, the date of death. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the hyoid bone is fractured on both sides, correct?
Yes.
Is that something that it would occur in one action? In other words, can a person's hyoid bone be fractured on both sides in one blow, or is that something that must be repeated in order for both sides to be fractured?
It's not necessarily like a blow. It's some kind of compression, something being held on the neck.
Okay.
It's not like you're someone in a car accident or jumping off a building and they fracture a bunch of bones. That never is fractured. This is something specific where there's compression exactly on those points in the neck. So it could have been one time and then maybe another time.
Okay, you were asked during direct examination by Mr. Petrofessa about would the injuries you noted be consistent with being stomped by a foot? You
Yes.
remember that question? And your answer was that that was consistent. Is that correct?
Yes, he has other blunt force trauma, and I'm meaning the contusion on the outside and the bleeding in the neck. That is blunt force injury, stomped. But the hyoid bone specifically itself, not really from a stomp, more of if you can take your foot and then hold it down on somebody's neck, if you imagine, you have to be compressing this part of the neck. in a specific manner to cause that bone to fracture. But the other injuries, yes, from a stomp.
And if a person of great size were to press their foot on someone's hyoid bone, on their neck, consistently, would that accomplish what you've just testified to?
Yes, it could.
Somebody that weighed in excess of 300 pounds.
Yes, it could.
Thank you. I'd like to please.
Thank you.
No redirect, Judge.
Okay, thank you. You can be excused.
Judge, I have one last quick witness before the lunch break.
Sure.
If I could retrieve the exhibits and publish to the court. People call Danielle Diaz.
Thank you. Could you state your first and last name and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Danielle Diaz, D-A-N-I-E-L-L-E, Diaz, D-I-A-Z.
Thank you. You're ready right now. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Morning.
My name is John Professor. I don't think we've met before other than briefly in the hallway today. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're here because you were required to by subpoena by the Sheriff's Office and the Prosecutor's Office. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell us, do you know Carlos Hernandez?
Yes.
And can you tell us how you know him?
He is my son-in-law,
Okay. And who is he married to?
my daughter.
And do you know Joshua Zuazo?
I don't know him by that name.
What name do you know him by?
Yogi.
Okay. And how do you know Yogi?
I've only met him like a couple of times.
Um,
I don't know him.
How long have you known Carlos Hernandez?
About 3 years now, 3.5?
Yes, I'm having a hard
Three
time.
or 3.5.
Okay. Today, before you came to testify out in the hallway, you were shown a video of a Ring camera, which is People's Exhibit number 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recognize Mr. Hernandez in that video?
Well, he has a mask on, so
Do you recognize that person as Carlos Hernandez?
yes.
And did you identify the second person as Joshua Zuazo, or Yogi, as you know him?
Well, I'm going to object to the form of the question. If she can make the identification here, but I don't want to, I think what she did before is irrelevant.
I'm sorry, counsel, what is your objection?
My objection is that this is not relevant for her making an objection or making an identification because she said she made one before. I mean, if she's going to say, now I can identify this person from the main video, that's a different story.
I'm going to overrule your objection. I find it relevant. Thank you.
And did you recognize the second person in those videos as either Yogi or Zuazo?
Well, I didn't. He was in the back. I don't.
Did you not identify him to my investigator 20 minutes ago as defendant Zuazo?
Your investigator didn't ask me if I identified Carlos or him. They didn't ask me any questions. They had me watch a video.
Okay. Did you recognize, I'll ask you one last time, Yogi in that video?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know.
Do you yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you known defendant Hernandez?
I just said like 3.5 years.
Okay. How long has he been married to your daughter?
They got married October 10th.
Do they have any children together?
18. I have. They have my. It would be his stepson.
Okay. And can you tell us where do they typically reside when they're not in the state of Michigan?
Katy, Texas.
Can you tell us when they came up from Katy, Texas, back to Michigan?
It was around, I want to say August 10th, maybe around there.
And what type of vehicle were they driving when they came up from Katy, Texas?
A Jeep.
Did they stay at your residence?
Yes.
Okay. And once they got up here, at some time, did you notice a DTE white truck parked out front of your house?
No.
Did you ever see Defendant Hernandez with any DTE addition of identification or type of plaques or ID?
No.
How was it that, do you recall when Defendant Hernandez and your daughter left town?
How was it?
Do you recall the Defendant Hernandez and your daughter when they left town to go back to Texas?
Yes.
Okay. And what time of day or night was it that they left?
I don't exactly know what time. I know it was night. I was sleeping. I'm in bed by 8:30, 8:45 every night.
Okay. Do you recall the day they left town?
It was, I don't exactly know the exact date. I think it was on a Friday. Well, actually, yeah, it was on a Friday.
Have you stayed in touch with Defendant Hernandez either by email or phone since he's been in custody?
We have video chatted.
How many times would you say you video chatted with him?
It's not so much video chatting with him, it's just saying hi to him on the video camera.
Okay. Did he have a birthday recently?
Yes.
Did you post on your Facebook wishing him a happy birthday on your Facebook?
Yes.
You posted that you loved him?
I do.
I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Ask him.
Thank you.
It's Ms. Diaz, is that correct?
Correct.
My name is Michael McCarthy. I represent a person by the name of Joshua Zuazo. You referred to a person that you know, his name is Yogi. I'm going to ask you some questions regarding your identification of him. And if I don't make myself clear here this morning, please tell me that, okay? And then I'll rephrase the question. Is that a yes?
Yes.
You've got to say yes or no because we're making a record here. So a moment ago, when the direct examination began, you were asked about whether you knew Mr. Zuazo, and you stated that you had seen him 2 times. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you said, I don't know him. Do you remember saying that?
Right, because I don't know him.
Okay.
He's been to my house.
He's been to your house, and that was twice he'd been to your house?
Yes, it could have been more, but all I know is twice.
Okay, and that's 2 times that you were home, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, did you spend much time with him?
No.
Did you take note of how tall he is?
No.
Did you take note of how much he weighs?
No.
Did you take note of the length of his hair?
No.
Did you take note of the color of his eyes?
No.
So you said that you, during direct examination, that you were shown a video by officers, deputies, detectives from the Sheriff's Department, correct?
Yes.
That happened today, correct?
Yes.
And you were subpoenaed to be here today, correct?
Yes.
And you came, correct?
Yes.
But you don't want to be here, right?
No.
You know, you were asked to identify a person from a Ring video, is that correct?
Yes.
You looked at 5 different clips from a Ring video?
They didn't ask me to identify anybody.
I understand.
Okay.
Listen to the question. You were shown 5 different clips from a Ring video. Is that right?
Yes.
And as you've just said, nobody asked you to make an identification, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you just watched those videos
Correct.
and took note of who you saw. Is that right?
Just took note of whatever the video was.
Right. I mean, in your own mind. You didn't write anything down. That isn't what I mean to
No.
imply. And you weren't asked any questions by the investigator who talked to you, or who showed you the videos, correct?
No.
So it was just silent. The videos were shown, you sat there and watched them, and is that a yes?
Yes.
And nobody that was present with you asked you any questions, correct?
No.
How long before you came into the courtroom to testify were you shown the video?
When did I first see the video?
Yes, when did you first see it?
When the detectives were at my house and came to my house.
And the detectives showed videos to you at that time?
They showed me a video.
A video, a ring doorbell type video?
Yes.
From a front door? And did either of the detectives that were there that day ask you questions regarding that?
They had me in my house for 7 hours.
That isn't my question. Did they ask you questions regarding the video? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Did you make identifications to the detectives at that time?
Yes.
Did you identify Mr. Hernandez?
I said it looked like Carlos.
What about your identification of the second person shown in the video?
They didn't ask me.
You were not asked any questions regarding that individual, is that
No,
correct?
no.
Okay. So then today you were shown the video again? Is that yes? And that was where there were no questions being asked of you. It was just a silent showing of the video. Is that right?
Yes.
And that refreshed your memory of what you saw during October when the detectives came to your house and spent 7 hours with you. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to identify the second man to be this individual, the second man shown in that video, to be the individual that you know as Yogi?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Just briefly, Mr. McCarthy touched on it. I just want to, I didn't go back in time too much, but your first contact with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department detectives was on October 12th. Is that correct, when they came to your residence?
If that was the day, yes. Yeah, I believe it's that day, yes.
And I think at some point in time when they're talking to you and they're asking about what it had seen, you break down and you're crying at some point.
I was.
Okay. And prior to that point, this case had made the news, and in fact, your friends had texted you about Carlos being on the video, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, were you present when your daughter got married to defendant Hernandez?
Yes.
Okay. Do you also recall one of the times that Zuazo was present was at that wedding? Do you recall him being there?
He was not at the wedding.
I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you.
May I follow up on that last question?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know who the groomsmen in your daughter's wedding were?
One of Carlos's brothers, another guy, Carlos, my 2 nephews.
So there were 4 people that were groomsmen then?
No, there was another one.
Well, let me ask it this way.
Okay.
Was the man you know as Yogi a groomsman in your daughter's wedding?
No,
Was he present there that day?
I did not see him.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Nothing else for this witness? Thank you. You can be excused.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I know the court had indicated an hour lunch break. This would be a good time for the people to break.
Okay, we'll take a recess at this point. Thank you. Court is in recess. All rise. Court is in recess.
Thank you guys so much for meeting our goal. We're going to go live on Every Day with Jay. We're going to skip over this break. The joy of replays, right? Okay, here we go. We're going to be right back in court. Thank you for joining today, guys. Make sure you hit the like button. This is a case out of Rochester Hills, Michigan. A pawn shop owner and his wife were attacked. The pawn shop owner was bludgeoned to death. This is the preliminary hearing. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Just as a reminder, we will go live tonight on Every Day with Jay. Make sure you're subscribed.
What you are witnessing is real. The participants are not actors.
All rise. Court is back in session. Thank you. You can be seated. Do you have another witness to call?
John Patrick Fessa on behalf of the people. We're ready to proceed with the court is.
Yes.
People call Sierra Ramirez to the stand.
Thank you. And just, I'm going to recall the case numbers, counsel. So calling case numbers 24233, I'm sorry, second amended. So calling case numbers 246318 and 246421, people of the state of Michigan versus Carlos Jose Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo.
Thank you, Your Honor. John Patrick Fessa and Andrew Navarro on behalf of the people.
Thank you.
Paula Michelle Watson on behalf of Mr. Carlos Hernandez.
And Michael McCarthy, P30169 on behalf of Joshua Zuazo.
Thank you. And my understanding is we have one more witness?
One very quick witness, then one statement witness.
Okay,
and then
very
we
good.
should be resting.
Thank you.
Approach on the other side. You sworn in.
Hello, your name for the record.
Sierra Ramirez.
Thank you. Can you spell your first and last name for the court recorder?
First name Sierra, S-I-E-R-A. Last name Ramirez, R-A-M-I-R-E-Z.
Thank you. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead and speak.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If you do me a favor and speak up a couple notches, the other table has to make sure they hear you too, okay? Can you tell us how you're employed?
I work for the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. I work in the forensic laboratory there.
And how long have you been doing that?
Just over 4 years.
Do you have any special training or expertise?
I work specifically in the forensic DNA unit doing biology testing, and I'm also a member of the crime scene units.
Okay, let me direct your attention back to October 11th of this year. Were you working in that capacity on October 11th?
Yes, I was.
Were you called out to a residence located on Newcastle Street in Rochester Hills?
Yes, I was.
Were you part of the evidence recovery team that was dispatched there?
I was part of the processing unit, yes.
Okay. Now, we've already had testimony about the scene, the pictures, and what was found there. So I want to be very specific in directing your attention to just a few things, okay? You indicated that you have training. Have you ever been qualified as an expert in anything?
Yes, I have.
And what have you been qualified as an expert in?
Forensic DNA analysis.
And have you testified as an expert?
Yes, I have.
Have you given your conclusions about statistical profiling?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, at this time, the people would move this witness as an expert in DNA collection and profiling.
Thank you. Any objections?
No, for exam purposes.
May I ask a question?
Yes. One here.
Thank you. Mr. Ramirez, how many times have you been qualified to testify in the past?
2 times.
And was that both of those instances in the Oakland County, the circuit court, or one of the district courts of Oakland County?
Both times were circuit court at Oakland County.
Thank you. I have no objection for purposes of preliminary examination for this witness to be qualified as an expert in forensic DNA analysis.
Okay, thank you. This witness will be admitted as an expert in forensic DNA collection and analysis.
Thank you. As part of your duties, do you compile a report that has your analysis and conclusions in it?
Yes, I do.
If I can approach, Judge, if I can show you People's Exhibit number 5, do you recognize that report?
Yes, I authored this report.
Okay. I want to be very specific. I know there was a lot of things submitted. Some things haven't been tested yet. But one of the things that has been tested, and I'm going to direct my questions to that, is item 172855. Do you see that on your report?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us what that item is in relates to what evidence was located?
This was 1 sealed brown paper bag containing 2 large zip tie swabs. Because I was at the scene, I know this was collected from the basement of the house.
Okay. And do you know who actually did the swabbing of that set of zip ties?
I actually did the swabbing at the crime scene myself.
Okay. Did you later do an analysis of those zip ties?
Yes, all the processing was done in our laboratory.
Okay. And with the samples that you had submitted of known quantities, did you come up with any DNA profiling comparisons that match individuals in this case and those zip ties?
Yes, I did complete a profile that was obtained, and I did comparisons to this evidence.
Okay. And was one of the defendants' DNA located on that?
May I reference the report?
Yes.
Yeah, the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 individuals and was compared to 3 individuals, and one of the defendants, Joshua Zuazo, was compared and in limited support. If I could read the full statement, though?
Yes.
Based on the DNA typing results, it is approximately 50.5 times more likely if the DNA originated from item 172979, Joshua Zuazo, and 2 unrelated unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unrelated unknown individuals. This analysis provides limited support that Joshua Zuazo is a contributor to the DNA results obtained.
And was there any other identifiable DNA that was found on those zip ties?
There was also a comparison to Hussein Murray, and may I read that statement?
Yes.
Based on the DNA typing results, it is approximately 871 quadrillion times more likely if the DNA originated from item 173030, Hussein Murray, and 2 unrelated unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unrelated unknown individuals. This analysis provides very strong support that Hussein Murray is a contributor to the DNA typing results obtained.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. I don't have any questions based on that, Murray.
Mr. Hernandez, my name is Michael McCarthy. I represent Joshua Zuazo. I have just a few questions to ask you here this afternoon regarding the testimony. If I don't make myself clear, please tell me that, and then I'll rephrase the question, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. You said you collected the zip ties in the scene that you were sent to by the Sheriff's Department, correct?
That is correct. I swabbed them at scene and also collected the zip ties in separate packaging. There were 2 different items collected from the zip ties.
Okay. And you said something about packaging just a second ago. Can you explain that?
So the zip ties were swabbed, and those swabs were packaged into separate packaging, which is the item number that has been tested on the report. And the zip ties were then placed into a different package with a different item number that was not submitted for this report.
Okay. So when you came onto the scene, and I just want to get this packaging clarified, were the zip ties that you observed, were they in a package such as a manufacturer would package an item for sale? Or are you talking about the packaging you did when you selected one of them and took it back to the laboratory?
Are you talking about the zip ties themselves at the crime scene?
Yes.
The zip ties were actually zip tied together to create it look like 2 handcuff type zip tie scenario. The pictures might do better justice than me explaining with words.
Okay. Well, I guess my question is, were they in packaging from a store, or were they just laying out there, these 2 zip ties that you picked up?
This clump of zip ties and the handcuff pad were on the floor near blood and the victim's body.
Was there any packaging?
No packaging, no material with it.
Thank you. Now, the amount, the percentage, or the probability, rather, I think is the proper term, for the 50.1 times likely that the DNA you collected was that of Mr. Zuazo. That's pretty low probability, correct?
It's a likelihood ratio, and it was 50.5 times more likely. It is limited support, and there is a verbal scale on the back to help with that.
And I'm looking at that very verbal scale, and I know that we have 0 probability means that it's excluded. 1 to 1.99 is uninformative, correct?
May I look at my
report?
report?
Okay. Certainly.
Yes, 1 to 1.99 is uninformative.
And then the next category goes from 2 to 99.9, and that's limited support, correct?
That is correct.
And that's where you say this probability for the DNA being that of Mr. Zuazo is 50.5, correct?
That is correct.
There are 3 other levels above that level of moderate support, which is 100 to 909 or 9,999, correct?
That is correct.
And then the next one up is 10,000 to 999,999, and that's called very strong support, correct?
Strong support, yes.
And yeah, that's right, just strong support. And then 1 million plus is very strong support.
That is correct.
Okay, so there are 6 different levels, and Mr. Zuazo's, according to your analysis, his probability is in the 3rd lowest of the levels, correct?
That is correct. It is an inclusion because on the other side, the statistic may be not a contributor. So the statistic is like a teeter-totter effect where they may fall on one side, exclusion or inclusion. In this case, it does fall on the inclusion side, but yes, in that limited support category.
Okay. And that's the best that you can say in terms of the support for,
yes, for that statistic.
What you found. And when you analyze these zip ties that were put together, as you say, looking like handcuffs, one circular inside the other circular, correct?
Correct.
They're connected together that way. Was it only one spot where you found any DNA present, or were there many spots on those 2 zip ties where you found DNA?
Only one swab was taken at the scene. Well, 2 swabs, one wet, one dry. Being at the scene in that environment, it may not be laboratory environment, but also trying to avoid any staining that could be consistent with blood to make sure that that's not impacting the result also obtained.
Okay, because you do have DNA from Hussein Murray that had a very high number, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then how many of these zip ties were recovered at the scene? Just those two or more?
There were 2 items, both the larger set that we are talking about, and then there was a smaller set similar to a handcuff type
Was
setup.
any DNA recovered from that smaller set?
If I reference my report real quick, I did actually test that in this report for item 172854 for 2 small zip tie swabs. A DNA profile is not suitable for further interpretation due to its complexity and unknown number of potential contributors. Therefore, no comparison can be done to DNA reference samples.
And there were other items that you collected as a part of the team that went to the home during the course of your investigation, correct?
That is correct.
And those are still in your laboratory pending testing for DNA on certain of those items?
Some of the items that are in this report as not tested will be tested in the next round of testing.
Okay, then that's the point that I wanted to get at. This is an ongoing investigation at the Forensic Science Laboratory, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Judge, no redirect.
Okay, thank you. You can be excused.
We'll call Wendell Smith, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you. Can you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name before the record?
Detective Wendell Smith, Wendell, Smith.
Thank you. If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Can you say where you currently employed?
The Oakland County Sheriff's Office.
In what capacity?
I am a detective at our Rochester Hills substation.
How long have you been employed in that particular capacity?
About a year.
And how long have you been with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office?
4 years.
And prior to your employment with the Sheriff's Office, did you have any other law enforcement experience?
4 years with the Detroit Police Department.
Did you say Detroit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to October 17, 2024. At that time, did you go down to Cato Parish in Louisiana?
I did, sir.
And what made you go there?
That is where one of the suspects from a homicide that occurred here in Rochester Hills was arrested.
And did you go there by yourself or with somebody else?
With a partner, Detective Weedman.
And how did you travel there?
We flew down there.
So you and Detective Weedman flew down there to Cato Parish?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that the 17th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you speak to the person that you went there to see?
I did.
Okay. And was that person Carlos Hernandez?
It was.
And the person you spoke with that day, is that person in the courtroom today?
He is.
Can you please point to him, identify him by something that he's wearing?
He's sitting right here wearing the orange jumpsuit.
Yeah,
the larger gentleman wearing the orange jumpsuit.
Thank you. Your Honor, let the record reflect in court that you've been made Mr. Hernandez.
The record will reflect Defendant Hernandez has been identified.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you went down there with Detective Williams to interview him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you able to interview him?
We were.
Okay. And where did that take place at?
At the Cattle Parish Jail.
Okay. And when you met with Mr. Hernandez, did he agree to speak with you?
He did.
Okay. And did you advise him of his Miranda rights at that time?
We did, yes, sir.
Did he say he understood those?
He did.
Did he agree to waive those?
He did.
And then you, Detective Williams, and Mr. Hernandez had a conversation?
We did, sir.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you guys discuss?
Before Williams answers that question, I just want to put on the record my objection under the brutal rule, United States versus Britain, any statement made by Mr. Hernandez to the detective that inculpates my client not be regarded or not to be considered by the court because of its hearsay nature.
People are aware of that. I believe the court will be able to differentiate between these two statements, and I don't think there should be any issues with that, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Very good. I just asked it. Keep that in mind.
And again, what did you guys discuss?
We discussed the incidents that happened here involving a homicide.
And did you explain to him that you were from Oakland County Sheriff's Office?
We did, yes, sir.
And did he know why? Did he say he knew why you guys were here to talk to him?
He did.
And what did you guys discuss about that?
We discussed. He stated that he was unhappy with how the media was portraying him, and that he did not do what the media was saying. He stated that he could prove that he didn't do these actions via an insurance policy.
Did he explain to you what this insurance policy was?
Sort of. He said he had recordings of a conversation on his phone, and he had items in a black bag located in his vehicle, but he would not go into detail as to what those were exactly.
And did you confront him or show him anything regarding the Ring videos?
We did.
And describe what happened with that.
He at first denied being at the residence, but after being told that we had him on Ring doorbell footage, he stated he was there.
So he described himself, that person you saw in the Ring video, that was him?
Yes.
Okay. What, if anything else, did you guys discuss?
There was a handgun missing from the scene. We asked him what happened to the handgun. He stated that he never had the handgun and was not sure what happened to it, but he believes that it was sold.
So while you're talking, he admits that there was a handgun there. He just didn't have it with him. It might have been sold.
Correct.
Did you and Mr. Hernandez talk about anything that was taken from that residence?
We spoke about cell phones, which were also taken from the residence. He stated that the cell phones were discarded from his vehicle while driving along a highway in Michigan, but he was not sure what highway or where.
So he admitted to having the cell phones from that location?
Yes, sir.
Did he say if he knew Mr. Zuazo at all?
Yes, he did.
And what did he say about that?
He stated they've been friends since childhood.
And did you guys discuss about any items that were located at the scene that day? Did you discuss any of those things with Mr. Hernandez?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. And did you ask Mr. Hernandez about Miss Murray at all?
We did.
And what did he say about Miss Murray?
We asked him who tied Miss Murray up. He stated that he did not tie her up and that Joshua was the one who tied her up. We also asked him who struck Miss Murray. He stated he did not remember Miss Murray being struck.
So he admits to Mr. Zuazo tying him up and not himself?
Correct.
Did you guys discuss anything regarding DTE?
We did. I asked him where the DTE, I guess we'll call it equipment and paperwork, came from. He stated that there was a third-party individual who provided them with the Murray's address and also provided them with the DTE equipment and paperwork.
So he involved you guys, there's a third party involved regarding that potentially?
Correct, regarding, yes, sir.
And then did you discuss anything about any of the information you had regarding Lowe's or Home Depot?
We did. We asked him why they went to Lowe's. He stated that Joshua wanted to purchase zip ties from Lowe's.
And then would that be a fair representation or account of the conversation that you and Mr. Hernandez had on that day?
Yes, sir.
And after speaking with Mr. Hernandez, what did you do next?
The next day, we obtained evidence from the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. We took custody evidence and drove it back here to Oakland County, where it was then logged by Detective Downey.
And based on your knowledge of the time, that was evidence that was obtained when Mr. Hernandez got arrested?
Yes, sir.
Right. And when you obtained that evidence from that police agency, were they in bags, or how was that marked?
They were all packaged and sealed in bags with a brief description of the items in the bags written on the bag.
And you and Detective Wigman took that back to Oakland County?
Yes, sir.
And how did you do that?
We drove back.
You and Detective Wigman drove back?
Yes, sir.
That was the next day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you dropped that off to the evidence of the Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall briefly what any of the items were that were
there were various clothing items. There was a hat, a couple masks, shirts, pants, a pair of shoes, pair of boots, jewelry, a hammer. I'd have to refresh my memory if you want anything more than that.
Do you have anything with you that would refresh your memory?
I do have my report right here, yes, sir.
Can you go ahead and take a look at that, and once you're done reading that, if that refreshes your memory, just look at me and I'll ask that question again. Did that refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And briefly, do you recall what some of those items were that were marked as evidence?
We had some DTE gear as well that was brought back. We took buckle swabs of Carlos's DNA that was also brought back. There were some cell phones brought back.
And lastly, when you were interviewing Mr. Hernandez, did you ask him why only Mr. Murray was killed that day?
We did, yes, sir.
What was his response?
When we asked him why only one victim was killed, he became irate and yelled something along the lines of, "What do you mean, why did we kill only one? It wasn't supposed to go down like that."
Thank you. I have no further questions.
I didn't hear the last part of what you said.
He said something along the lines of, "What do you mean, why was only one killed? It wasn't supposed to go down like that."
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And Dr. Sam? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Did you and your partner go down to the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Department to interview my client, or were you going there for evidence collection only?
So we initially went for evidence collection, and once we arrived, we were informed by the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office that Carlos had made statements stating that he wished to speak with us.
Okay. And in your report, you stated that you had been advised previously that Carlos was asked if he wanted to make a statement from the arresting officers, and he declined. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do you recall what time of day your interview with Mr. Hernandez took place?
I believe it was in the afternoon sometime. I'm not sure the exact time.
Do you recall the length of the interview?
It was probably about an hour.
Do you recall in that interview, either yourself or your partner asked my client if he had any mental health issues, and he disclosed that in fact he did have a pretty significant diagnosis, correct?
I do, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he did tell you that he was not medicated or he wasn't taking his medication, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And it was your decision and your partner's decision at that time that you would continue the interview based on his answers. Is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you agree with me that throughout that 1 hour interview that my client repeatedly, when you asked him questions, repeatedly says, if you get me in front of a prosecutor, I'll give the information.
Yes,
or
ma'am.
Get me a prosecutor, I want to talk to a prosecutor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you continued the interview after he repeatedly made those comments, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you touched on this briefly when the prosecutor asked you, I think one of his final questions. My client also repeatedly says that it wasn't supposed to go down like this. It wasn't supposed to happen, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that was in relation to Mr. Murray losing his life, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, it's time to collect any additional witnesses.
Thank you.
For Mr. Hernandez, we have no witnesses.
Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. Zuazo, the defense will not be presenting any evidence at this hearing. The defense will ask.
Thank you. Okay, closing arguments?
Your Honor, the people move for bind over for both defendants on all counts. I think the evidence, which you've clearly heard in today, has established probable cause for all the charges. I'll save any other argument if needed.
Thank you.
Your Honor, there has been a significant amount of evidence provided today. From the testimony, it was clear that the investigation is still ongoing. At this time, I do believe it's a question of fact for a trier of fact in the circuit court.
Your Honor, I believe that it is a question of fact as well. I think there are issues regarding identification. There's continuing investigation being done by the Sheriff's Department, Rochester Hills Police Department, Prosecutor's Office. So I too think that this matter has to be determined by jury.
Thank you. Okay, the defendants have been charged with count 1, homicide, felony murder, count 2, unlawful imprisonment of Hussein Murray, count 3, unlawful imprisonment of Linda Murray. We heard testimony today from Linda Murray regarding the events of October 10th and 11th, and her testimony of identification of the defendants, witnessing the events of the defendants going into the basement and thereafter binding her with duct tape. We also heard from other witnesses, including Deputy Copeland, who was present on the scene thereafter. We also heard from Valerie Maya, Dr. Brian, medical examiner, Sierra Ramirez, Detective Wendell Smith. All of these witnesses combined, we have substantial evidence that has been admitted today, pictures, video, etc. And based
she
upon
is really
all
young
the,
and really pretty.
testimony of these witnesses, based upon all of the exhibits that have been entered, this prosecution has met their burden by probable cause standard, and this court finds probable cause that the defendants committed the crime. This court will bind over to the circuit court. Thank you.
There we go. Just like that. Bye, big boy.
I didn't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. And I didn't want to see anybody else either.
Judge, one last matter. The court had scheduled to hear that motion at the end on the picture that was...
Yes, this is Mr. Zuazo's motion.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Michael McCarthy appearing on behalf of Mr. Zuazo's. This is the motion to dismiss that I filed on his behalf a couple of weeks ago, scheduled for today. I know that the court has read the motion and the law and the argument that I presented. There's just a couple of points that I'd like to highlight, and that is that just on the timing, he was taken into custody on the 14th day of October, but he was not arraigned on these charges until the 18th day. So there's this 4-day gap, and the law is that he be arraigned within 72 hours. I cited federal, the United States Supreme Court authority, Gerstein versus Pugh and Riverside v. McLaughlin, who in Riverside in particular talks about the time when probable cause is to be determined, and the court has set a timetable of 48 hours as the reasonable time, and that when it is longer than 48 hours before a probable cause determination by a magistrate is made in terms of a warrant, then the court's terminology is the calculation changes, or the calculus changes, and that's what I submit happened here, because he was brought into custody or taken into custody at a job site in Plymouth To answer these charges, he was immediately confined, and so he wasn't at liberty. It wasn't one of those situations where he was put out on a personal bond and his arraignment could be conducted at some point in the future without any harm to him. And evidence was collected. His DNA was taken, and a search warrant was authorized on the 14th day of October to conduct a search at his home. So those things were ongoing, and it was not until 4 days after his arrest on the 18th that he was actually brought before the court and arraigned. When the evidence is being collected, that is purportedly inculpatory evidence, and that happens during that time frame, after the 48 hours, and this prejudice is presumed, then that does raise a real issue as to whether that evidence that's collected is admissible, and secondly, whether the charge can even stand. And so I've cited the Fourth Amendment and also the court rule, MCR 6.104, as authority for the fact that this is supposed to happen in a manner that is at least within 72 hours. Now, I've read the people's response. I understand the people's position is that there are 2 outstanding warrants and that therefore the people could wait quite some time, 72 hours, to have the defendant arraigned on one of those misdemeanor warrants that was outstanding, and then even wait another 72 hours before he's arraigned on that second one, and then address the issue of bringing a charge against him in this case, or charge is. However, taking that argument at face value, the facts of this case are that he was not arraigned on either one of those 2 outstanding misdemeanor charges, and it still went a total of 4 days before he was arraigned on these charges. And so it is, and I know one other thing, and that is in the people's response, they submitted that the warrant was actually submitted to the court within 48 hours on the 16th, and that the defendant, that my reading of the court's register of actions is that it was authorized by the court on the 17th, but the defendant still was not arraigned until the 18th. So it's for that reason, or those reasons, that I'm asking the court to dismiss the charge, the case brought against Mr. Zuazo.
Yeah, okay.
And to suppress the evidence collected.
Denied.
After 48 hours.
Thank you. Response?
Judge, the court's aware that I did file a timely written response after this motion was filed. There's really nothing additional to add other than indicating once again that the warrant was issued within 48 hours. There was nothing unreasonable about the delay between that and the court getting him physically here with an attorney to be arraigned, and there's certainly no, I think, at all violation. The other warrants would have kept him in. The fact that he's had no bond this entire time shows he wasn't going anywhere, even if he was arraigned the second he was arrested. So there's also no type of remedy I've ever seen for cases wherever a murder case has been dismissed under a situation like this. So I don't think there's a violation in any way. It's certainly not unreasonable, and I think the motion should be denied.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, you're not.
Thank you. Okay, with regard to the motion before the court finds that there was no unreasonable delay. The defendant had additional warrants out of other jurisdictions. It looks like there was a warrant out of the Taylor Police Department and the Ecorse Police Department.
He had other warrants. Get out of here.
These charges are extremely serious, and I don't believe that there was any unreasonable delay. So for that reason, your motion is denied. Thank you.
Thank you,
Judge, just one last housekeeping. This is the first time I've ever appeared before you. Will the court issue a written order on this ruling, or should me and Mr. McCarthy write one up to present to the court right now before we leave?
You can check.
I can't with Crumbly's lawyer.
I can draft order and you can draft order.
And her posture, or lack of.
Thank you, Judge.
We just raised that. I joined with Mr. Beckfessel before we moved to the case after it's public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Off the record, the court is in recess.
Give me a break, dude. You had other warrants.
Yes.
Get out of here. Monsters. Ha, John gone. Gone girl, says is the judge. Single. Gone girl. What you talking about? Crushing on the judge. Here's big man. Big man who can attack an elderly couple, right? Holding his fucking drawers up. I really want to see this trial through because these guys piss me off. Don't mess with kids and don't mess with the elderly, right? Jeez, oh, Pates. Well, thank you guys for meeting our little goal here today. We're going to be live tonight on Everyday with Jay. I guess I will see you then on the flip side. We will talk police reports and all things crumma, I guess. Let's roll our credits and get the heck on out of here. I got presents to wrap. Merry Christmas. happy holidays, all of that good stuff. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Enjoy yourselves if I don't see you before Christmas. But hopefully I'll see you tonight. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, moderators. Let's go. So much for watching. If you enjoyed this live stream or video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my latest content. Want to take it a step further?
Bring it all in.
And join our community clickers by becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You'll get exclusive access to our Discord server, special channel perks, and much more. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.
Click, 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 click. It's real easy, man.
I don't give a damn, I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn, you talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn, I don't give a damn, damn, damn. I don't give a damn, damn, damn. I don't give a damn, damn, damn. I don't give a damn. You wanna be with me. You wanna feel something real, but I'm feeling differently. You're making plans to get to friends, but don't wanna face the fact that I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. Staying up late, sleeping all day, dreaming about Cadillacs. Buying new shoes, hanging by the pool, sipping on Coke and Jack. Calling my phone when you feel alone, but I'll never call you back. 'Cause I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. I don't give a damn, I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn, you talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn, I don't give a damn, damn, damn. 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 You're mad at me for not giving you comfort. You say that I'm away so much, and now you don't feel the way you felt when we were younger. But that's okay for me, 'cause